know about the situation of African Canadians. How long have African Canadians been in Canada? What were the beginnings? What was some of the struggles, some of the difficulties? And there was nothing in the curriculum that I was teaching at the time that spoke to this. Forward to my election 1993. And at the time, for the very first time in Canada, we had two new parties in the House of Commons. Of course, we had the Liberal Party and we had the Conservative and we had the NDP. But two new parties came into the House of Commons in 1993. The Bloc Québécois and the Reform Party. At the time, the discussion was around debt and deficit and trade issues. And the conversations were around softwood lumber, ice cream and yogurt, and all of the trade between Canada, the United States and Mexico, the trade issues. So here I was asking colleagues to focus away from these issues to look at some of the concerns that we had in the community about the presence of African Canadians in the mosaic. And to go back a bit, in 1971, Canada stepped out as the first country in the world to announce that we were a diverse society, that we were multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, multiracial. And yet there was that sense that having declared who we were, having declared a multicultural policy, that everyone in that multicultural society was not included equally in the society. We did not teach about groups in the society. There were so many things we needed to do to make sure that what we said in law and in legislation and in policy, that we could make that happen. And so I talked about the fact that we need to do something about the learning and the teaching and the awareness that must happen. And when we saw the difficulties, and I saw it when I was in the system, that African Canadian young people were experiencing in the system, there were voices that were advocating and voices that were active around what needed to happen in the school systems. And this is why, Dr. Brown, teachers and principals, what you're doing today and what you are doing around diversity, equality, equity, inclusion, and your departments and those who are heading those conversations are so, so important. Because to live together, to work together, to have that peaceful environment, to have that love for each other, we must know each other's history. And so I called on my colleagues in the House of Commons to recognize, and I did that, it's called a motion. I put a motion forward, and the motion was very much to the point, because if you put anything more than what was necessary to say, then you get into a debate, and I didn't want a debate. I wanted a motion to the point. And the motion said, and it's about 3 sentences, the motion says that this House, which is the House of Commons, that you recognize, you take note of the important contribution of African Canadians to build the settlement, to the growth, to the development of Canada, that you take note also of the diversity of the Black community in Canada, And I ask that you designate February as Black History Month in Canada. It was tough going to get the attention of all 305 members of Parliament. And why did I have to go to all 305? Because one never knows who is going to be in the House on the day when I would stand up. So everybody had to know what I was going to say, what I was going to do, and what was required of them. We got unanimous consent to the motion because, as I said, there was nothing that was debatable or that they could debate in that motion. And so 1995, December 1995, the House of Commons made the designation that February will be is designated as Black History Month in Canada. Granted, the Americans were celebrating Black History Month in the United States since 1926. So what we were doing was not completely novel. We had different people and different organizations around our country that was already following some of the work that was taking place in the United States. And so it was important when we designate that we talk about Black History Month in Canada. And I keep saying over and over, we're talking about Black history in Canada. We're not pulling out heroes and heroines from the United States. We're looking right among us because we have people who've been making contributions, people who have been part of the building, people who were part, who have contributed, whether it's in wars, whether it is in academic circles, whether it is in whatever the field of endeavor that you can think about. We've had Black Canadians. And so this is a time to focus. And this is a time in your classroom and in your research that you go and you ask questions around people of African descent. And all of this is really to ensure that the textbooks, to ensure that teachers, to ensure that the conversation is legit, that if a teacher starts talking about that history of Indigenous people or that history of African people, that they're not questioned. When I was in the classroom and I would bring that up, I was always unsure what my supervisory officer would say about my talking about issues that's not in the textbook. We know now, we have the textbooks, we have curriculum modules, we have videos and tapes and our libraries and other places. We can now find information about people of African descent. So Black History Month does a number of things. It helps us to focus on the presence of African Canadians. It helps us to know each other, because I think it's important for us to know each other's history, so that when you sit you're beside someone, whether it's in church, whether it's in a theater, wherever we meet or come across people of African descent, we have a sense of their history. We could respect their history. And I keep saying over and over that Black Canadian history, Black history, is not for Black people. Black history, Black Canadian history is Canadian history. It's the history of the peoples of our country. We must know each other. We must know each other's history. We must know that we came in waves. We must know that there are good things that have happened in Canada. And there were some difficult things, that there was enslavement of people in Canada, that there was some things that were difficult for Canadian politicians to deal with. There were things that are built into the system because of colonialism and because of Eurocentric ways and modes of doing things. And so this focus on who we are, this focus on the fact that we're all contributing members, And at the same time, it's important for us to have allies. And when I say ally, I'm talking about someone who knows about us, about African Canadians, who are willing to stand with African Canadians to make sure that there is peace and justice and all of those things that matter. Because to do nothing is to do something. To say nothing is to say something. And I'm sure you've spoken about that when you talk about bullying and you talk about whatever. If you just stand back and let someone be bullied, then you've given some signals that it's okay to do that. If when someone is bullied, you say nothing, then you've said something, you've given affirmation. And so we need to know about our brothers and sisters, every one of us who are God's children. And in spite and despite of our background or place of origin, the color of our skin, the texture of our hair, it is important that we understand, we know, we respect each other, and we make place for each other. So it's not good enough to be friendly with each other in school and in the schoolyard and on the sporting field or in other avenues. It's also important that as young people, you include them in your birthday parties. You include them in events and other things, so that you are not excluding some people from what could be an opportunity to learn more about you, and for them to learn, and for you to learn more about them. And so when we talk about Black History Month, we talk about honoring the enormous contributions that Black people have made and continue to make in all sectors of society. It's about celebrating the resilience, the innovation, the determination of Black people in the society. Because as you begin to learn that history, as you begin to read, you'll see the difficulties. You'd see the residue of slavery. You'd see the colonial, the way that colonialism has shaped the way in which we operate. And this is why your teachers, and this is why your programs around diversity and inclusion include all of those things that make the society less what it could be. The pandemic, the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, all of those things that you've heard about, the essential workers, all of those are discussions, I'm sure, that take place around your family table. All of those things have created for us an environment to look at others in the community, how we could be inclusive, how we can share, how we can participate, and how we can have everyone participate in the discussion that would make our society, would make our classroom, would make our school board, would make all of us better people. Because as you said in your theme, Beyond Black History, walking with peace, all those things are part of the reflection, part of the way in which, the way forward that we have to go. Because you see, young people, the baton has been passed to you. The activists and the advocates of the old days that were saying we should do this, we should be here, we should the other, they've now passed that to you to say we have to continue to build that society. We have to continue to build, to be that, those people who are progressive, who are looking forward, who see love and joy in the presence of others. And so as you talk about, you discuss the way in which you operate, the inclusive way, where you pull everybody in, know also that the whole world has sat up, and they're still in this reflective time that you're in the United Nations with 193 or so countries. They recognize, and there was quite some discussion about the fact that people of African descent, no matter where they are in the world, in Poland, in Slovenia, in Russia, in the Middle East, in Korea, in Australia, in New Zealand, in the US, in Canada, wherever people are, African Canadian people are, their situation is the same around racism and discrimination, the job situation, promotional opportunities, the justice system, whole lot of things all around the world. And so the United Nations made a declaration. Let's take 10 years and ask all of the nations and states of the world to do something to improve the status of people of African descent. And so the decade started in 2014 to 2024. So in 2024, we as Canadians who signed on to this United Nations Declaration will be going and reporting to the UN what we've done in this decade to better the situation of people of African descent. You see, the United Nations know that with those who sign on and who committed would make a difference. Because you see, they had the experience when they did the Decade for Women. We came back to Canada and we set up status of women, and we have all kinds of things related to women. And so they used that pattern to say, we have to do something. We'll use that model, take a decade, and in that decade, school boards, classrooms, entertainment circles, religious circles, everywhere in the world, let's do something about the status of women, and come back in 2024 and report on the situation of people of African descent in your various states and countries. And so where we are right now, we're in the 8th year of the decade, 2 more years to go. And so all the work that has been happening around diversity, around inclusion, around equality, around equity, all of those discussions, all are pointing to what we must do. But again, as Catholics, as people who believe, as people who know the gospel message of love, the gospel message of peace, the gospel messages that have been brought to us, where you have an opportunity on a daily basis to reflect. We know we don't need mandates. We don't need legislation. You can't legislate love. You can't mandate love, but you could and should and ought to reflect, ought to do something because it is important and necessary, and because you believe. And Black History Month wraps all of that together. Let's learn about each other. Let's be aware of each other. Let's be respectful of each other. Let's look at our Black brothers and sisters sitting with us, playing with us. Let's see them as neighbors. Let's see them as friends. Let's see them as children of God. Let's see them as we see ourselves. And so it's the learning, and it's the respecting, and it's the celebrating. And so I thank you for all that you do, all that you're doing. I thank you, Mr. Brown, and all the others for the leadership, because leadership is so important. And I'll end with something that someone said fairly recently. Know your past and honor it. recognize what's happening in the present and embrace it. And that knowledge that we have to forge to the future. And it is the young people, all of these 11 schools that are with us, or 18 schools that are with us, St. James, St. Elizabeth, St. Pius, James Colnan, St. Cecilia, St. Vincent de Paul, Holy Family, and those that used to be in my circle, St. Louis, St. Leo, St. Mark, Holy Angels, St. Josephat, Holy Trinity, Our Lady of Sorrows, St. Ambrose, Bishop Allen, Bishop Morocco, Thomas Merton, and Father John Redmond. I am so happy to have had the opportunity to say a few words to you this morning, and I'm prepared to answer any question that you would like to ask. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Honourable Jean Augustine, for your heartfelt remarks. Thank you. I would like to now open the floor for questions from our students. And the first school on the list is St. James. I'll ask that a student will ask one question per school, so we give the opportunity for as many students to speak as possible. So Daniela from St. James School, is she able to connect with us?
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning.
It's Joanne Saragosa.
Hello, Ms. Zaragoza. Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Daniela is here with us. And Honorable Jean Augustine, I just want to say thank you. And my father, Godwin Darmanin, Bess, we go back a long way.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, Daniela, what is your question, Daniela?
Write down so she can see. What was it like when you first came to Canada? Did you experience any racism?
When I came to Canada in 1960, as I said earlier, Canada was a different place. You didn't see as many Black people around as you see today. In the stores and in the shops, Daniela, I couldn't get the right powder for my face. I couldn't get the right stockings for my feet. There were just few Black people at the time. The big immigration wave didn't come a little later. Actually, there were laws on the books that said that Black people, were not, could not survive the Canadian winter, etc. There were all kinds of reasons. But at the same time, there were people who had been here for generations, people, especially in the area of Nova Scotia, the 6th and 7th generation of African Canadians. And there were people who were pushing the system to make sure that we had a just and a fair society, asking radio stations to have the voices and accents on radio, and asking to have us on television, and finding places where we can get jobs and we can get opportunity. I was able to get a job with the Catholic School Board, and in many schools where I was the only Black teacher in the school, or the only Black person there. So things have changed from then to now, and changed for the better, with a leadership right now that is fully aware of what we all must do, and with educators around you who know what is important to do. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you very much, Dr. Augustine. Our next student that we would like to ask to connect is Rebecca from James Cullinan. Is she still on Zoom? Not yet. We'll come back to Rebecca. We'll go to St. Cecilia. Kyla from St. Cecilia had a question for Dr. Augustine.
Hi, my name is Kayla, and the question that we had for you is, what challenges did you face being the first Black woman elected as a member of the Parliament?
Kayla, that's an interesting question and a difficult question. When I got to the Parliament of Canada, there was no Black woman who had walked there. Actually, in the Parliament of Canada, they were not even used to a lot of Black people around. There was Lincoln Alexander, who was the very first Black person in the Parliament of Canada. And he was there for a short space of time. He was in the what was the Joe Clark conservative government that was short-lived. And then there was Dr. Howard McCurdy. And Dr. McCurdy and Lincoln Alexander had gone by the time I got there in 1993. And I jokingly said, there was no one who threw breadcrumbs for me to follow. So I had to make my own path. I had to make my own friends. I had to get to know procedures and policies. And I had to be a quick learner. And I had to make friends. We talk now about, we use the word ally. I had to find allies. I had to find individuals who knew the system and who would be my friend and who would be an ally to make sure that I'm able to do my best work. And I also, Kayla, I'm sure you know this, and I learned this from my grandmother, you have to be 3 times. You have to work 3 times as hard and twice, and be twice as good to get the kind of recognition that you need. There were a lot of nonsense and that I didn't pay attention to. For example, when I was going with a motion, I had to speak to everybody and say, would you support my Black History Month? I had people say, well, when are we gonna have White History Month, Augustine, if we give you Black History Month? You know, things like that. And, you know, I had been in leadership positions before. I was head of Metro Toronto Housing. I had been on various boards, I as a school principal, etc. So I went to the Parliament of Canada with some strength and with some fire in my belly that I was able to overcome a lot of the nonsense that came my way. At the same time, I must say that there were wonderful people in leadership who recognized my skills and who gave me the opportunity, you know, to be a minister, to be parliamentary assistant to the prime minister, etc., etc. I got lots of opportunity because I had allies and because there were people in leadership, like the people who are in leadership at your board right now. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you very much, Dr. Augustine. Our next student that has a question is Kieran from St. Vincent de Paul School.
Just bringing Kieran over and he's going to ask his question.
Thank you.
We are aware that you proposed legislation for Black History Month. What are some other things you did as an MP?
Apart from what I did, Karen, as an MP, one participates in everything that's taking place in the Parliament of Canada. I served on different committees. I was chair of Foreign Affairs, International Trade. I was elected by my colleagues as the chair of the Women's Caucus for 3 years in a row. I was on Human Rights Subcommittee of Parliament, etc. And I was minister. There were several things that I'm very proud that, you know, of. I introduced a whole number of parliamentary committees. One on the Parliamentary Committee on Microcredit, the Parliamentary Committee that we set up on reproductive health, looking at the health, the education of girls, etc. around the world. And I focused on some issues where I think our parliamentarians might be helpful. Canada-Africa Parliamentary Group, Canada-Cuba, because Cuba needed the assistance of parliamentarians and friendship from Canadian parliamentarians. So I set up a whole lot of stuff. I was very active, very busy because I had come from Toronto, from community organizing, where we were always setting up, you know, committees and working on different things. But the motion for Black History Month, I'm very proud of that. And the motion to put the statue of the famous 5 women on Parliament Hill. When Karen, when I went to the House leadership to ask, can we have a statue of a woman? Because all around the House of Commons, and even if you walk the halls, Jean Sauvé was the only woman picture you saw up there. And by the time I was ready to leave, we had Kim Campbell. It takes a while to get those pictures done. At the same time, we had to recognize that we had to speak about the situation of women. And I was told, you can't get women's statue around Parliament Hill because the rule says only dead monarchs, parliament, prime ministers who were nation builders, statue could be around Parliament Hill, which meant that we would not have a woman for the next whatever if we were going with the old statute. So Sheila Copps, who was a minister, she was deputy prime minister, she was also the minister for Canadian Heritage, they worked at rescinding that older statute and therefore made room for me to get the motion for the statue of the famous 5 to be placed on Parliament Hill. So anytime you go to Ottawa, look for that statue. And maybe those of you can talk to your teachers about those women, those 5 women who pushed to make sure that women were persons in law, because the law said that women were not persons, that women were chattel. In other words, women could not be appointed to the Senate, loans and banks and whatnot, without the signature of their father or husband or whatever. So that was a very, very important decision that was made, giving women in Canada the right to be persons. But we know that some women didn't get the vote till 1960, Indigenous women, some women, So when you're talking about the right to vote in Canada, who got the right to vote when, this is also an important topic for you to look at and discuss at some point. But I'm very happy about my record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Augustine again. Our next student is from from Holy Family. Her name is Sophia. Sophia, are you still here?
She is. Here we go.
What advice do you think of, what do you think about Black history in Canada? What do you feel about laws from that past allowed racial segregation?
Well, when we talk about Black history in Canada, we can do several things, Sophia. We can go back to the very beginning and we can say, look, Black Canadians came here in the first recorded, actually, Black Canadian is Matthew da Costa, who came on the voyage with Champlain. We know he was a navigator, and we know that he was able to translate from French into Mi'kmaq, and that he made it easy for that voyage to land. We can talk about some of the difficulties there were in Canadian society around race and around discrimination, that the United Empire loyalists brought enslaved people with them, that there was slavery in Canada, there was buying and selling of people in Canada. We can talk and move forward into a number of different policy decisions that were made, and at the same time, the struggles of people of African descent to make sure that we were part of this mosaic and this just society that we were claiming to want and to have. So there has been discrimination in this country. And when we talk about Black history, and this is why I stress in Canada, because we don't want to weed through American history. Although a lot of things have happened here have been patterned, as it were, after the American situation. But when we talk, in February, when we look at the history, we look at Black History Month as focusing on the difficulties, on the successes. We need to celebrate people who've overcome despite poverty, despite discrimination, despite lack of promotional opportunities, despite being paid less than other people in the society. And then we need to see all of that and work in allyship with our indigenous peoples, work in allyship with others in the community to recognize that we are moving forward, and those microaggression and racist things that have happened, let's see how we can move away from that and put them in the past, because it's knowledge, awareness, education that is the way forward for us. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you again, Dr. Augustine. Our next student is from Holy Angels, Gabriela. Gabriela is still here? Not yet. Okay, we will move on to Bishop Allen Academy, and the student's name is Sheila. We would like to ask Sheila to connect with us.
Hi. Hello, Dr. Augustine. My name is Shiloh, and today I have a quick question to ask you. So being a Black woman and accomplishing everything you have achieved is an inspiration to so many people around the world because we know of the possible discriminations and struggles you have faced. So regarding this, what advice would you give people who are hesitant or afraid of the negative encounters that comes with being a success?
Okay, that's an excellent question, Shiloh, and it's also an important one for me. I have accomplished a lot, yes. You know, in my grandmother's time, I would be very modest about saying, oh, well, you know, but I know now that I can say confidently that I have accomplished quite a bit. At the same time, I realize that it is important for me to say that a lot of things I've accomplished with others. So for example, I didn't march up and down to Queen's Park asking for, you know, issues around people caught in socioeconomic difficult situation, what we need to do. I didn't do that alone. I did it with others. And so I say to young people, when you look at people who've accomplished something, know that they have had to be in teams, know that they had to work with others, and also recognize that one is where one is at because of the support. When Desmond Tutu got the Nobel Peace Prize, Bishop Desmond Tutu, he just passed away, rest in peace. When he got the Peace Prize, he said, if I stand tall, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of so many people who are supporting me. And so this is why your parents, your neighborhood, all those around you are supporting you so that you could succeed. And you don't let success get to your head. You don't put, as my grandmother would say, you don't put your nose up because you've achieved a little more than something else. To whom much is given, much is expected. You have to share. You have to participate. You have to give back. You have to reach back and pull others up with you. And this is what I've been doing most of my life. I've been trying to push myself forward, but at the same time, bring others along with me. I'm not too sure I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you for taking the time to answer. It was great speaking to you.
Thanks, Shiloh. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. We have a speaker from the panelists. Mr. Persia would like to ask a question from St. Joseph School.
So you're bringing on the big ones now, huh?
Wait, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, my name is Maria, and how hard was it fighting for human rights?
It's difficult to fight for human rights. And the word fight sometimes brings up the, the connotation that, fist is in the air and whatnot. I think it's a whole struggle to make sure that, that the rights of individuals are respected. First of all, your rights, and therefore the rights of individuals, the rights of a community, the rights of a society around a certain issues. First of all, you have to identify what that wrong is that you want to right. Because unless you know, you understand, you can speak to, you can clarify what it is that you want to see change. And oftentimes, we make mistakes if we don't know what the issue is. And so before we start the struggle for human rights, we must know what we're talking about, in what area. We must know what was done before. We must know who those rights are affecting or the lack of those rights are affecting. Where in the political system or in the system that we have to approach, where do we go? Where is that entry point to make to have the discussion? And how do we start it before we escalate it? You see what's happening right now with all the blockades and the whatnot. Where did we start this discussion? And how do we move it from a discussion where there could be some resolution to going straight into fighting?
One more time.
Okay, Teresa.
Thank you so much. It was for Sylvia, but sorry about that. We'll take one quick question from Janine Maloney from Bishop Morocco Thomas Merton School. I know we're getting very tight with the time, but we'll allow that one more question.
Janine?
Maybe Janine, please unmute yourself if you're still here. Okay. Well, we will move on to our surprise guest, and we would like to introduce one of our teachers from Bishop Allen Academy, Mr. Kirkos de Souza. Mr. Kirkos.
Hi, everyone. And hi, Dr. Augustine. I'm the chaplain at Bishop Allen Academy. And when I was in grade 7, I was a student in the MSSB at St. Gregory's, where Dr. Augustine was the principal. So she was my principal at St. Gregory's, only for a year though. And what happened was my mother, who was a teacher in the board, had moved my brother, my sister, and myself to St. Gregory's, specifically because Dr. Augustine was the principal. It was an opportunity for us to be in an environment where there was a person of color, and us being people of color as well, to see someone in a position of responsibility and to have that very positive experience. And we're very blessed to have that. And of course, later on that year, Dr. Augustine, you left education and began another chapter in your life, and eventually was in the House of Commons, where again, you served as a role model for so many. And of course, today you continue your journey as an academic, helping to raise awareness for equity and inclusivity, and to be an advocate for the dismantling of anti-Black racism in education. And so we thank you so much for all that you've done in terms of serving as a role model and being an inspiration for people in my generation and in the generation that's tuning in today. Thank you so much, Dr. Augustine.
I am so touched, Mr. De Souza. But I think you underline and underscore the importance of, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And this is why it's so important what Mr. Brown and others are doing in ensuring that they hire more people of color, more teachers from the African Canadian community to ensure that the young people can see it so that they could be it. And I thank you and I thank your family. And I remember D'Souza's, but D'Souza is a name that's so, so popular that, you know, I have lots and lots of friends, especially the ones from Goa and background from Goa, and I still have them in my circles. So I'm so happy that you've said this. And I want to leave two things that I meant to say and didn't say when we talk about equity and equality, and when we talk about diversity and inclusion. Equality is giving everybody a pair of shoes. And equity is giving everybody a pair of shoes that fits. And diversity is having everybody in the room, because you have no choice these days. We are a diverse community. So everybody is invited to the dance, but inclusion is ensuring that everybody gets a chance to dance. And so those are my two little words I want to leave with everybody: equity, equality, diversity, invited to the dance, and inclusion, making sure that each and every one of us can dance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Augustine. That was beautiful. I just like to see if Janine is back in Mrs. Veloce's office for a quick question. We can hear you, Mrs. Veloce. I think she's speaking, but we can hear her. So Mrs. Veloce, is your student ready to ask question?
Thank you. Our students have transitioned to period 2, so I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
We've gone over time, Leila. I think that is the situation.
Okay.
I mean, the world doesn't stop for Jean Augustine, you know?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank again Dr. Augustine for joining us today, and everyone that is on the panelists and attendees, everyone that helped with this session. We are blessed with such a dynamic and role model living in our writing Ward 4, Etobicoke Lakeshore. Thank you so much for that. We will now ask one of our students, Odessa, for a closing prayer. Thank you very much. Odessa, you have the microphone.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Amen.
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.